Hi guys, I will explain the laminate theory part 3 from stiffness element characteristics to summary. Here I have a quiz for you. What is the correct description about the stiffness matrix? Number 1. Stiffness matrix is a symmetric matrix. Number 2. Stiffness matrix is not a symmetric matrix. We have derived the stiffness matrix in the previous videos. We have known that there are three kinds of submatrices: in-plane stiffness, out-of-plane stiffness, and finally, coupling stiffness matrix between them. Let's look into what is the role of each element in the stiffness matrix. Now, let's learn how to know the role of each element in the stiffness matrix. For example, what is the role of B12? Full description of Nx can be expressed as shown in this equation. Therefore, we know that B12 links curvature kappa y to force Nx. This can be described as in this picture. The plate curvature kappa y produces tension force Nx in proportion to B12. Its contribution to Nx is 1 out of 6 sources. Here we have another example. What is the role of another B12? Full description of moment mx can be expressed as shown here in this equation. Therefore, we know that B12 links strain epsilon x to moment my. This can be described as in this picture. The plate strain epsilon x produces the moment my in proportion to stiffness matrix element B12. Its contribution to my is one of 6 sources. B12 has the same value as that in the previous slide. This B12. The individual element has its own meaning. Let's start to look into diagonal elements first. A11 and A22 are the tensional stiffness related to x and y directional deformation, respectively, and A66 is related to shear deformation. In the same sense, D11 and D22 are the bending stiffness, and the D66 is the twisting stiffness. Now, let's look into the off-diagonal of A and D matrices. In this expression, the first word denotes strain or curvature, and the second word does force or moment. We have A12 for tension, and we have A16 and A26 for shear tension, and the other A16, A26 for tension shear. And we have D12 for bending, and D16 and D26 for twist bending, and the other D16 and D26 for bending twist. In the same way, to know the role of an element of stiffness matrix of the previous slide, we can naturally know the role of elements in the matrix. The curvature kappa xy produces the bending moment mx in proportion to stiffness elements D16. The curvature kappa xy produces the bending moment my in proportion to stiffness element D26. B matrices are the coupling matrices between in-plane and out-of-plane matrices. The curvature kappa x produces the force Nx in proportion to stiffness element B11. The curvature kappa y produces the force Ny in proportion to stiffness element B22. The curvature kappa xy produces the shear force Nxy in proportion to the stiffness matrix B66. In the same way, for the other diagonal stiffness element, the strain εx produces the moment mx in proportion to the stiffness element B11. The strain εy produces the moment my in proportion to stiffness element B22. Finally, the shear element εxy produces the twisting moment mxy in proportion to the stiffness element B66. The pictures shown here describe how the curvatures produces the forces. The curvature kappa x produces the tension force Nx in proportion to the stiffness element B11. And also, curvature kappa y produces the tension force Ny in proportion to B22. In the same way as before, for the off-diagonal elements of B matrices, we have B12 for bending tension, and the B16 and 26 for twist tension, and another B16 and B26 for bending shear, and the other B12 for tension bending, and another B16 and B26 for shear bending, and the other B16 and B26 for tension twist. For example, the curvature kappa y produces the tension force Nx in proportion to the stiffness element B12, and the curvature kappa x produces the tension force Ny in proportion to stiffness element B21. As the other example, the curvature kappa xy produces the tension force Nx in proportion to the stiffness element B16, and the curvature kappa xy produces the tension force Ny in proportion to the stiffness element B26. The answer to the quiz is number 1. Stiffness matrix is a symmetric matrix. Here we have a summary. Stiffness matrix is a symmetric matrix. The role of each stiffness element can be found through full expansion of the corresponding row of stiffness matrix multiplied by strain and curvature vector. The role of each element in the stiffness matrix has a unique role, linking specified strain or curvature to the corresponding force or moment. If you watch the previous videos, you can easily understand the upcoming videos. In the previous video, E0035, I started to explain laminate theory related to the price tier. Recently, I explained how to calculate the forces and the moments for multi-layer laminate composite plate. The next video will be price tier part 9. I will explain the laminate theory part 4 about the laminate code expression and the types of laminates. Please hit the like and catch the brand new videos by pre-subscription. So what are you waiting for? See you in next video. Goodbye guys.